The star of the Netflix series Tiger King watched the show like many of us, watching it all in one go. The feline-loving owner of the Big Cat Rescue Sanctuary in Florida had been told the show would be an expose on the mistreatment of animals in America. But let's take a look at what we saw.
They have a heart and a soul and a mind. I've learned from them. But Carole Baskin keeps saying, I can't have these tigers.
If he ever had an enemy in his life, it was Carole Baskin.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's Carole at Big Cat Rescue.
Carole is the Mother Teresa of cats.
We will end the private possession of these cats.
This is my way of living, and nobody's going to tell me any otherwise.
Okay, so 1 year on, how has the series changed her life and changed things for her? Joining us now is woman herself, Big Cat Rescue founder Carole Baskin. Carole, g'day, good morning from New Zealand. Lovely to have you on the program. Welcome.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
What do you pinch yourself now and think, man, how did it turn out like this, and how did this go this way? What's your view of where it's at now and where you're at?
You know, thankfully, I have a pretty good philosophy on life, and that is that no matter what happens, no matter how horrible it might seem at the time, that it was all intended to turn out the way it should and is turning out the way it should and leading us to a higher sense of enlightenment. So when this happened, I had to really sit back and go, all right, well, it's going to take me a while to figure out why this is going to be a good thing. But it has managed to do that over the past year. The tide has definitely changed.
Yeah, and you won't always agree with how it's portrayed or what's portrayed. But at the end of the day, the message has clearly got through. And it looks to me like lawmakers are going to change laws as a result of your work.
You know, it's about time. We've been working on this law since the 90s, and we had a partial pass in 2003 that made it illegal to sell big cats across state lines as pets. But ever since 2003, we've been trying to close the loopholes, and the biggest one is the cub petting. That's driving most of the abuse. And I think you're right. I think it's going to pass this year, and finally we will have brought that very cruel industry to a close.
Carole, what is life like for you now compared to, say, just over a year ago before The Tiger King came out? Because I'm among the millions around the world who binge-watched this series, and I understand you binge-watched it as well. And then straight after that, your phone rang hot. Every 2 minutes or something for 3 months, it didn't stop. But the calls weren't always nice, and the accusations made towards you and about your ex-husband haven't always been nice. So how are you dealing with that? What's life like?
Yeah, those first 3 months were really horrible. And the vast majority of the calls and social posts and emails that I was getting were so hateful. And I was just shocked that there were people on this planet that were so cruel that even if what they had said about me was true, which it wasn't, that people would take it upon themselves to go and try to find me just to try and grief me over that. I had no idea that there were so many people like that. But the worst part of it for me is that I'm on call 24/7 for bobcats. If they get hit by a car, that the person that they call is me. And bobcats always seem to get hit at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I couldn't leave my phone on because I couldn't sleep. It was just constantly ringing for those 3 months. And no telling how many cats ended up dying as a result of me not being able to take those calls.
Yeah, it seems to me, obviously, you're about, rescuing cats, giving them a better life. You've got Joe who's about showing it off. And it seemed to be you were always portrayed as, especially in the early stages of it, as the villain. Was that unfair? Did you feel that? And was it unfair?
You know, we worked on this for 5 years thinking that it was going to be the blackfish for big cats. Did you guys see the blackfish over there?
No.
It was what brought down SeaWorld when they exposed all of the abuse of these killer whales in captivity. SeaWorld had to change the way they were. They don't take these orcas from the wild anymore. They don't breed them in captivity anymore because the public was so horrified. And so that's what we thought we were working on, is something that showed how cruel it is from the very moment these cubs are born and then used as pay-to-play props and then discarded into horrible situations. And so we were happy to help them. And every time they wanted to come out and film, we were happy to let them come out and film. And we had no idea that they would turn it into this petty feud idea that they had, given the fact that I had never even spoken to Joe. I mean, that was like I don't even know how how they fell on that as being their storyline, because you've got to have two people fighting in order to have a feud. And every time they would try to get me to say something nasty about him, I just wouldn't do it.
And people, as you said earlier, people can get nasty, and your phone, you're inundated, so you turned it off, and all sorts of accusations were thrown your way. One of the accusations was, and you would have had this question many times, and you've been accused of, was actually killing your husband, and somehow, you might have fed him to the lions or whatever. Now, how ridiculous is this thought, and what's your reaction to it?
You know, what's unfortunate is that the reason people say those things about me, say that I killed my husband, they say that I fed him to the cats, or that he's buried under the septic tank, the reason that those statements were ever made by these animal abusers is to deflect away from what they're doing. I was always talking about the issues, always talking about protecting the animals in the wild and preventing the captive breeding and holding these animals hostage. I never went after anyone personally or said anything nasty against any of these people that you saw in Tiger King. I never went after them on a personal level, just talking about the issues. But they can't talk about the issues. So the only thing they can do is to try and deflect the attention away from the fact that we're losing the tiger in the wild due to the fact that we're creating such a huge legal smokescreen with all of these captive-born cats that are causing the tiger to be poached in illegal activities. And so the fact that they have found that to be so effective in diverting the attention away from them, and then Tiger King producers giving them a megaphone for completely derailing the entire idea of protecting big cats and turning it into that kind of unfounded accusations against me, was just beyond belief. I can understand why the animal abusers do it. Why on earth the producers of Tiger King stoop to that level, I still don't understand.
You've downplayed the rivalry that you might have had with Joe Exotic, and you say that you hardly ever spoke to him, but there had to be a rivalry because he's inside for conspiring to have you offed. So he definitely felt there was a rivalry.
From what I have seen and what people in his circle have told me is that he was constantly bashing my name and saying everything that ever happened was, he would blame it on me. I've had people calling me for years. You know, you guys just heard about what was in the actual trial, but the government didn't bring in all of the other people who have reached out to me over the years saying that he had tried to pay them to come and kill me. And every time, of course, I turned that over to law enforcement. They just never did anything with it. But I've never spoken to Joe. The only time I've ever even been in the room with him was when he was using our name. We had to sue him to stop using our name because people thought it was us out there doing cub petting and these abusive things. And so there were a couple of times during the course of those trials where I was actually in the same room, but not any engagement with him. And then there was one time that I was in Ohio. If you remember, back in 2011, Terry Thompson turned loose 56 lions, tigers, bears, and other wild animals, and then he killed himself. And these animals were running loose in the adjoining neighborhoods. And so right after that, Ohio decided to ban the private possession of big cats. And I went there to speak in favor of the bill. And Joe attacked this little tiny lady who was the director for the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. So I got in between him and her so that he wouldn't do that. But even then, I didn't say anything to him. So I've never said anything to Joe, and I've never taken any kind of pot shots at him personally. It's just this practice of breeding cubs, ripping them away from their mothers, pimping them out for $10 or $20 a hit to anybody that'll pay you, and then discarding them once they get to be 12 or 16 weeks old. That's what I'm speaking out against, and that's why the animal abusers hate me.
So, Carole, do you think jail is the best place for Joe at the moment? Should he stay there, or do you support him being released or pardoned in the near future?
So I think it was the Daily Mirror that had quoted part of what I had said, And then that got picked up by everybody else and kind of twisted around. But what I had told the Daily Mirror was that if Joe really wanted a pardon or to reduce his sentence, the best thing he could do would be to work with law enforcement to bring down the really big fish in this arena. Joe was he was the easiest for law enforcement to catch. There are others that Joe has worked with for decades, and I think he knows where the bodies are buried. He knows how they get around the law. And if he were to work with law enforcement to bring them to justice, and if he were to work with our legislation to enact this Big Cat Public Safety Act, which would stop the cub petting and phase out private possession, then of course I would be all in favor of him having a reduced sentence and would speak in favor of him for doing that. My husband has said the same thing, but I saw on ET last night, which I was not expecting, but on ET last night, they were positioning it as Joe saying, okay, I'm going to call your bluff. I'm going to say that I'm going to do this. And I was like, no, just saying it, that's not the deal. You have to actually do it. So if he would do it, I'd be all in favor of a reduced sentence.
It's been a pleasure having you on today. Just finding what is next for you? What happens now? Is there a new program? What happens next in your life?
You guys get the BBC UK version there?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure we do.
Yeah, is it? No, I don't think we do.
Are you familiar with Louis Theroux?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, he just came out with a film, I think last Monday, and it's called Shooting Joe Exotic. He was the first person who came to the U.S. and filmed Joe and exposed what was going on there. And then nobody took it seriously. And he actually had footage of Joe threatening me then and talking about a hitman in Tampa that they were looking to hire. And so all of this footage just came out in Shooting Joe Exotic. And I just talked to the producers from there, and they said that it's like trending higher than anything they've had in forever. So they're really excited about how well it's doing there. But we're also working with ITV, who I think also has a UK version. And they are working on a series where we're working on filming the pilot this week or this upcoming week. And so it will be a show that hopefully will be a series that'll actually talk about the work that we do. And in addition to rescuing cats and doing rehab and release for native cats, the main part of what we've been trying to do all these years is to expose abuse wherever we see it, bring it to the public's attention and to law enforcement's attention, and then really put pressure on law enforcement to do something.
And many people will say you're doing God's work, and well done on your success as well. And to the critics, you just carry on. Big Cat Rescue founder Carole Baskin, appreciate your time. All the very best.
Thank you.
Everyone.